Growing up as a gamer, I played a lot of memorable gems like Prince of Persia series, and I was really hyped when Ubisoft released their first installment in the Assassin's Creed series back in 2007. The series spanned and cultivated into a massive phenomenon, captivating gamers and fans with the newer gameplay and better story through many different protagonists in the ongoing war between the Assassin Brotherhood and the Templar Order. The series focused on the war between these two secret societies through the memories of certain characters with the help of a device called the Animus, and with it, anyone can have access to their ancestors' memories within their genetic DNA. Pretty cool in my opinion, and honestly something I would definitely love to pretty much dabble in. So of course, I was surprised during the release of Assassin's Creed Syndicate, there was a young adult novel that was based on the Assassin's Creed series as well, by Scholastics of all people. Yeah, the same company that was pretty much known for releasing some really popular classics such as Clifford the Big Red Dog. They're responsible for releasing a line of Assassin's Creed novels. And honestly, that's even more weirder than the fact that they pretty much released a line of young adult Halo novels. But the bigger surprise is that this managed to pretty much expand the universe of the games as well, with the telling of the story of 6 unlikely teenagers who will soon discover that their lives were built for a much greater purpose. So join me as we pretty much take a look at Assassin's Creed The Last Descendants. The author in question is Matthew J. Kirby, who has written a number of middle grade children's books. His notable work includes his debut novel, which is The Clockwork 3. He is also the winner of the Edgar Award for the Best Juvenile Mystery in 2012 for another novel that he's written, which is known as Icefall. He has written 3 books in the Last Descendants series. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the story of it. The story centers around 6 teenage protagonists and their ancestors who were linked in passing during the New York Draft Riots of 1863. They are brought together by an ex-Abstergo researcher by the name of Monroe, whose only goal is to find the powerful relic that is known as the Piece of Eden, or in this case, the Dagger of Eden, before either the Templars or the Assassins could wind up getting their hands on it. Now, the teens must risk it all to find the clues that will lead them to the relic in the first place within their ancestors' memories in order to stay one step ahead of the two groups, as their future lies within the past. My thoughts on the whole story was that I was very impressed and in awe of how good the writing for the book was, and that's something that I never really expected. I just thought it was just going to be a really boring novel that was just going to pretty much bear the Assassin's Creed name, but it actually proved me wrong. Again, I didn't know how anyone would take a series which is about a group of individuals committing murder in secrecy and manage to make that into a series for teens to enjoy. But they did it. The story was so entertaining that it would be a perfect installment for maybe like a Netflix series, kind of like The Witcher or a series of unfortunate events. Something that I would definitely love to see that would branch out and explore the story a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? And maybe something to be broadcast on something like MTV or Freeform. In my opinion, it just goes to show that there are certain things that a book has that pretty much provides good material that can make a TV show or a movie. And the narrative of the book is pretty much set in the real world as well as in the simulation of 1860s New York during the Civil War period, being told from different character point of views. Depending on their location within the setting or whatever relation that they have with the character that they pretty much know, this is pretty much just what sets things in motion. The story changes from one perspective to the next, heightened up and filling in the blanks of what happens next. Then we jump right into the characters. The story mostly centers on a group of kids reliving the memories of their ancestors. The group includes Owen, a young boy who is trying to prove his father's innocence, who died in prison. His ancestor is the assassin Varius. Javier, Owen's friend, whose ancestor is Cujo Cormac, which is the grandson of Shay Patrick Cormac from Assassin's Creed Rogue. Then there's Grace, an African-American girl from a good upbringing. Her ancestor is the servant girl turned assassin named Eliza. Then there's David, Grace's younger brother. His ancestor is Eliza's father, Abraham. And then there's Sean, a wheelchair-bound young man that uses the Animus to experience the feeling of walking again. His ancestor is patrolman Tommy Grayling, who makes several appearances in the Assassin's Creed comic book series. And finally, there's Natalya, a shy Russian girl who is not a people person And I mean that by being told to use a machine against her own will to pretty much find an ancient relic that's pretty much being hunted down by 2 secret societies. Her ancestor is Adelina Patti, a famous opera singer, and yes, this is a real historical figure. The kids are guided through the memories with the help of Monroe, a shifty and mysterious co-worker of Abstergo Industries who has stolen the Animus to find the piece of Eden before the two groups can actually get their hands on it. But it begs the question, should the kids really trust him? Now, the ancestral characters I feel are not as interesting as other characters in the series like Ezio Auditore or Haytham Kenway or Connor Kenway or hell, even Edward Kenway. I feel like they weren't given enough time to be flushed out as characters as the kids were, and even with that, with the limited time that they had, the kids didn't really have enough time to pretty much be flushed out as characters as well. But their dynamics are really enough for me to be invested. Like, we understand where each of them have come from, we understand a good part of them. Hopefully that changes in the next 2 installments, and it gives us more detail about their upbringings, it gives us more detail about their characters and whatnot, and it gives us more detail about how they feel about being trapped in the situation. And the problem with that is that I feel more for these kids than I did for their ancestors as well. It was just like, at least with the Assassin's Creed game, it was like when you pretty much play like maybe Assassin's Creed 3, you start to feel more for Desmond as you start to feel more for Connor, but you don't get that same feeling in the book. You know, I wish there was more to the story than what we were given. I wish that they pretty much like, you know, just expanded a little bit on that one. And it didn't really help that the book was really short. It was like a really short read. Like, if in one sitting I could pretty much get this book done literally in a day, probably like maybe like 3 hours if I'm not pretty much distracted, 2 to 3 hours tops. It's not that difficult for me, but it did make me want more. It did make me want to pretty much pick up the next book in the series just so I could see what happened. So it wasn't really something that was groundbreaking that pretty much held my attention, but it did show that there was some good promise there, that I think they were pretty much like keeping the readers in the dark until like they come up with the next book. And hopefully it becomes more interesting as the books go on, but only time will tell on that one. So in the end, The Last Descendants feels more like an Assassin's Creed side story, but it's not really a bad thing. This is good because readers will probably be introduced to the series in a way that they can't when they're pretty much playing the game. It pretty much has a lot of interesting moments from history itself that can pretty much like inspire more research into it. The characters aren't all that bad, even though that there's really no characteristics or anything memorable to them, or at least not as far as I know of. Unlike BioShock, the story is just trying to tell its own tale and have an original idea about teens and the ancestry of assassins, Templars, and other famous figures, which is why it's a good read if you're into history or if you're an Assassin's Creed fan. Either way it goes, I recommend it to these type of people. Like, if you're a huge history fan like I am, you'll probably get some entertainment out of this one, and it'll probably like talk about certain history aspects that'll make you do some research on it. But if you're an Assassin's Creed fan, it will probably give you some entertainment out of it, just not enough to where you pretty much feel satisfied. But like I said, there's more books in the series, so maybe I'm just judging a book by its cover. Maybe I'm just like counting my chickens before they hatch. All I know is that I honestly wish that there was more they could have done with this book. I wish there was more detail they could have pretty much put in there. I wish there was more that they can pretty much make it more exciting and make it more like inventive and pretty much have me more invested into it, because me, I was just reading through it and then I just got done as quickly as I pretty much started. It was kind of disappointing, but honestly, let's just hope that the next 2 books aren't going to pretty much make me feel the same way. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for Assassin's Creed The Last Descendant. If you want to check this book out, I would suggest pretty much finding an audiobook of it. But other than that, that's my review for it, guys. Anyway, if you have read this book, what did you think about it? Leave it down in the comments below. And also, if you pretty much have a suggestion for any books that you want me to read, also leave it down in the comments below. That's all I have for this video. This is Crazy Kent. I'm out of here. Happy reading, and peace out.